After visiting the region, Gordon Brown announces a new British strategy for dealing with terrorism on Afghanistan and Pakistan's border. But what's really new about it? Will it go deeper than the preemptive nature of previous plans? And will labelling the area the crucible of terrorism only make the job harder? Gordon Brown, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the fight for control. This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Kamal Santamaria. So, a new strategy for Afghanistan and also Pakistan. Well, more than 7 years after the region was destabilised by the invasion of Afghanistan, coalition forces and governments are still looking for an approach which will actually work. And all the while, the situation just gets more volatile. It is the same place as ever, Pakistan's northwest frontier province, which borders Afghanistan. In particular, the Swat Valley, around 160 kilometres from Islamabad, which has been a Taliban stronghold for a long time. The most recent fighting, you see it there between the Taliban and government. In those districts there, Lower Deer, I should say, and Buner, which are close to Swat. Just last week, the Taliban entered Buner, which is only 100 kilometres from Islamabad. That all started when the Taliban attacked a paramilitary convoy in Lower Deer. That was Sunday, prompting security forces to retaliate. The Taliban was warned to vacate the Buner Valley, and when they failed to do so, the offensive was then switched there. On Wednesday, the Pakistani military announced they'd retaken control of the main town in Buner district. For this military offensive, Western allies feared the Pakistani government was too weak to contain and control the Taliban, especially after the Pakistani government agreed to introduce Islamic law, Sharia, in parts of the northwest frontier province. The point we're making here is that Western and local strategies aren't exactly working in harmony, and Gordon Brown's recent visits to Pakistan and Afghanistan, however cordial they might have looked, have raised questions about what is the best way forward. Let's discuss all of this and more with our guests. In Kabul is Ahmed Shah Ahmadzai, is the former Afghan Prime Minister, now the director of the Islamic Research Centre in Kabul. In Islamabad is Imtiaz Gul, author and chairman of the Centre for Research and Security Studies. And rounding out our panel in London is Afghan expert and author Michael Griffin. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Inside Story. I want to start with some of what Gordon Brown actually said on his trip to Afghanistan and Pakistan. This is him in Kabul before his trip to Islamabad, with a statement and a phrase which is likely to stay with him for a bit. Have a listen.
It's absolutely clear that there is a chain of terror that starts in these border areas and sweeps right across the world and ends up with impact in our capital cities and indeed in other cities in the world. And it's clear, therefore, that we cannot sit by and allow this centre or epicenter of terrorism to continue to exist without taking further action.
Michael Griffin, let's look at some of this. Epicenter of terrorism, chain of global terror, and the one line we didn't hear in that little sound grab, the crucible of terrorism. It's almost like we're done with 8 years of President Bush, where we had the axis of evil and the war on terror, and if you're not with us, you're with them, and now it's all starting again. Is this rhetoric helpful in any way?
Well, I think it's helpful to the extent that it does show the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, trying to re-establish his authority over a military policy which really has been driven into the ground in Helmand province until recently. It shows him trying to attain some degree of leadership. I don't personally believe, I do believe in the existence of a crucible of terror, in the sense that he is quite correct to argue that most plots to kill people in this country are having some kind of a Pakistani connection. So to this extent, what Britain does in Afghanistan does have this Pakistani dimension. But I don't think we're looking particularly at seeing Britain redeploying its forces on the frontier with between Afghanistan and Pakistan, because we're too thinly stretched already in Helmand province.
Imtiaz Gul in Islamabad, let me come to you. Do you think with that sort of talk in Kabul that Gordon Brown made life a little bit more difficult for himself, because there was a suggestion that President Zardari actually snubbed him and he had to go and meet with the Prime Minister Gilani instead?
Well, not necessarily. I think both President Zardari and Prime Minister Gilani have been basically acting and speaking in unison. The problem here is the gravity of the situation, this expanding theater of war, which had originated 2 decades ago in Afghanistan, then traveled to the tribal areas, and now this terror is knocking at the doors of Islamabad, also unsettling, unnerving people in the districts, northwestern districts, as you mentioned earlier in your introduction, Bunair and Swat. So I think the problem is becoming quite big, if not very big, for the Pakistani authorities, for the Pakistani military to handle. And I think that's what, I would say, both Pakistan as well as the United States and the UK at the moment appear clueless as to how to handle this situation after 7 years of failures also in Afghanistan.
Well, so this is blind leading the blind at the moment, is it, if you're saying the UK and the US are clueless in it as well?
Well, I think there have been suggestions to that effect. I think we have repeatedly heard from a number of intellectuals, analysts, think tanks in the United States as well as in the UK, and that's based on the empirical evidence on the string of violence that has hit Afghanistan and is now hitting and striking at the state structures, symbols of state in Pakistan as well. This spiral of violence has simply expanded with all these sorts of phrases being coined, crucible of global terrorism or the haven for sanctuaries for Al-Qaeda. On ground, we haven't seen any concerted effort, any effort that includes the United States, the NATO, UK, and Pakistan itself. There's been quite a lot of mistrust vis-a-vis the Pakistani military establishment in particular, and I think that has forestalled a lot of work that could have been achieved in the last 7 years.
Ahmed Shah Ahmadzai in Kabul, let me come to you. Did you see anything in Gordon Brown's trip to Afghanistan, his media call with President Karzai? Did you see anything different there, anything new? I mean, he talked about fixing Afghanistan requires the cooperation of Pakistan. Did you see anything that gave you a feeling that there might be a change and there might be a new way forward and cooperation with that as well?
Unfortunately, although the visits of the European NATO members to Kabul, they bring nothing good but disasters. And they are encouraging war and increasing war and casualties and killing, nothing else. As all of us, we know that in the last 7 years, all NATO members, they could not do anything good to stop war or to stop killing innocent people. With Gordon Brown, with his statement that he will support the two sides, Karzai and Pakistan sides, to have control on borderlines, this is completely impossible. All this frontier line, 2,500 kilometers, is one nation and one people, and they cannot kill all the whole 2,500 kilometer living people there. And this will increase more disasters and more problems, especially for the West. And our proposal, our statement to Gordon Brown is to get rid of these not possible action.
Let's move to Gordon Brown in Pakistan. That's where he went after his trip to Kabul. This is some of what he had to say at a media call there.
Our two countries face a shared and urgent threat. Extremism and terrorism destabilizes societies. It risks the security of populations. It attacks the fabric of our way of life. As Pakistan works to strengthen its democracy, so the challenges to that democracy come forward, making their presence felt both in Pakistan's cities and its tribal areas. Today, we have agreed a new and stronger relationship between our two countries. Vital and urgent work we will undertake together, which sets out our shared priorities of tackling violent extremism. We will support each other more strongly on counter-terrorism activities.
So apparently, Imtiaz Gul, this is part of the start of a new relationship between Britain and Pakistan. How? How can they start a new relationship and not fall into the same trap that, for example, Pakistan and the US have fallen into?
Well, I don't really think it's a new relationship. Gordon Brown faced a very awkward situation when he visited Islamabad to the context of 12 Pakistani students who had been arrested, maltreated, and were almost deported because the police there didn't find any evidence against them. So there was quite an outrage against the British police, British authorities, for what they did to the Pakistani students. So there, I think the Gordon Brown tried to send a signal to the Pakistani government and to the people, like appeasing them that we are turning a new leaf in our relationship, and that we will take on this scourge of militancy, the scourge of terrorism together. We didn't see anything new, and that is also manifest in a couple of reports that have come through Pakistan's foreign ministry. When the ministry was asked what are the 10 million pounds about, what are they meant for, which Gordon Brown announced, there is nothing on paper available with the Pakistan foreign ministry or with any other ministry. So in essence, he was just trying to appease the bruised egos of Pakistanis. And now if it would be very difficult to believe that they are really turning a new chapter in the bilateral relationship. It's, I think, the old rhetoric wrapped in new words like the crucible of global terrorism. And I really am skeptical at this moment as to whether this could be branded as a new relationship between the two countries.
This is Inside Story, where we're discussing the ongoing unrest in the border regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and more specifically, what the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown is doing to combat it. Our guests are in Kabul, former Afghan Prime Minister Ahmed Shah Ahmadzai; in Islamabad is political analyst Imtiaz Gul; and in London is Afghan expert Michael Griffin. So let's look then at this new strategy of Gordon Brown's, because what he's done is he's focused on the Taliban and then, as we've heard Michael Griffin say, link it to what has happened in Britain. Prime Minister Brown told his own government that the 3/4 of terrorist activity in Britain originates from that area, and it's a breeding ground for extremists. Now, his apparently new strategy includes 700 extra troops transferred for the Afghan elections, taking the total to 9,000. But bear in mind, this is only temporary. Britain will move from what he calls frontline operations to a focus on training the Afghan army and police force. He says the aim of this support for Afghanistan's own security forces should lead to handing over control of Afghan provinces to the Afghan people, kind of like what was done in Iraq. The strategy also includes some non-military support. We have a look at that. Education projects, more than $180 million, in fact, in the hope that these education projects can stop the spread of extremism in young people. Also, an extra $700 million in aid to tackle Afghanistan's poverty. Michael Griffin, let me come back to you. In London, I'm not a military expert. You probably know a lot more than I do. But when I see the number 700 extra temporary troops, doesn't sound like a lot, doesn't sound like it would do a lot. What do you think?
I think whenever you look at the numbers, which are numbers of forces deployed, you have to divide by 6, and that gives you the number of fighters who are actually, fighting a war. The rest are support people. Now, Gordon Brown's plan here, and I think the next stage for Barack Obama also, is they have to secure somehow the outcome of the elections in August this year. This is either going to give President Karzai, a second term where it's going to bring in a new individual at the helm of power in Afghanistan, and many people think that this is what's required there. So if you look at that, 900 is the figure I got, 900 British soldiers would be going in there. They would be going in there partially to train Afghan police and military to take the stress and strain which obviously the Taliban will seek to impose on what is going to be a classic anvil moment. This is where the Taliban, these elections is, in the run-up to these elections, is where the Taliban can demonstrate across the broader landscape of Afghanistan that they can stop NATO and they can stop whatever commitment that still remains to democratizing Afghanistan in its tracks. And that is the immediate requirement. The second thing is, you probably realize that Barack Obama is doing his own mini-surge in Afghanistan, and that's going to double the number of troops in Helmand and hopefully eradicate the opium industry, which allegedly provides the Taliban with its operational financial resources.
No, it's good you mentioned Helmand, because I've read notes which you've written saying that you believe coalition troops are Helmand's a problem area for them. They're kind of pinned down in there. Do you think extra numbers is the answer to help them out there, or is there the potential that if you focus too much on Helmand, it kind of frees up other parts of the country for the Taliban to exert influence there?
Well, one of the reasons why Helmand is so important is it sort of maintains the majority of the opium and heroin exporting industry, and the UN and America, particularly the United States, regards this as being the basis of the Taliban's financial resources. I think probably there are other sources coming in from your part of the world, in fact, to provide the salary for Taliban fighters. Now, if you assume that the British have been sitting in Helmand province for nearly the best part of 3 years, taking quite substantial losses which really look very, very bad on British television, without actually taking on board the idea of counteracting and suppressing heroin, opium production in Helmand province, which would undermine the Taliban's financial basis, then you're looking at something which is seriously a contradiction. If the Americans say we're going to put another 8,000 troops, Marines, tough people, into Helmand province, and on top of that, 168 helicopters, you're looking at a serious reversal here.
Ahmed Shah, in Kabul, let me come to you, because there's another idea which we should explore, which Gordon Brown's talking about, and that's the idea of training up Afghan troops, putting more focus on training up Afghan troops. Now, they're training up troops to do a job which NATO's not been able to do itself until now. Are Afghan troops going to be able to succeed when eventually these troops draw down, the US and the UK troops draw down?
You know, the actual problem is that unfortunately the Western or the NATO forces do not look at serious. It's not a matter of training. Afghans are all trained, especially for the last decade that we were fighting against Soviet Union. Every individual Afghan is a trained soldier, is a trained military man and policeman. We do not need more training, extra training. The main thing is that we and the West, we all should try to bring a system that attract all the Afghans to go with. Now the Gordon Brown and American people, they are talking that implement democracy in Afghanistan. Now democracy is just a word, does not have any real face, especially in Afghanistan. What we saw and what we say in true democracy, that means killing innocent people, bombing the villagers in the name of terror, in the name of Taliban. These are all wrong allegations that they are putting on Afghans just to justify their killing.
So what about a different style then? I'm sure you know of Iraq, the awakening councils, which were used to sort of bridge the gap between the government troops and the extremists, as they were called there. I mean, is that possible in Afghanistan with tribal elders and things to use them as a bridge between the two extremes?
No. See, the problem is that we had already very well organized army. When the NATO forces came, they dismissed all those trained officers. Now thousands of our former military soldiers, military officers they lost their job. They are training the young people for 10 months, 9 months, and now more than half of them are running. They are not ready to fight against their own people. Those are trained for the last 7 years. Now 60% of them, they have left the job and they are gone back to their home. There is nobody, no incentive behind an Afghan young man to fight against his own countrymen.
All right, so a level of pessimism seems there from Kabul. Let's switch to Islamabad. Imtiaz Gul, another aspect of Gordon Brown's plan, and I think this is one area where we can say it is a slightly new approach and it is a different approach. He wants to put $180 million towards education. I've read about books being distributed to try to deter young people from extremist ways. Do you think that can be effective?
It is, of course, an effective way of keeping youth from radicals away. This is what we have been advocating the past 7 years. But if you look at these past 7 years, the performance of the British or the commitments of the British and the American governments, there has been too much emphasis on the military solution. I think this is a scandal that the 7-8 years they have consumed billions of dollars on just the military option, and whereby they totally, I would say not totally, but to a great extent ignored the social infrastructure. And the same is the case here. And whether Afghanistan or Pakistan, I think this very negligent attention on the social infrastructure, particularly the education, basically also fueled this sentiment, anti-American, anti-Western sentiment, and that was exploited by Al-Qaeda, by the Taliban. And the irony is that in the last 7 years, Al-Qaeda has taken over certain sections of the society, both in Afghanistan and Pakistan. It has become an inspiration for a lot of people, even if they are small in numbers. But the problem is they are everywhere, and this is the challenge that confronts us all, whether the UK, the US, or Pakistan.
And I guess his argument, and I'll put this to Michael Griffin in London, Gordon Brown's argument is that if you educate the people, especially the young people in Pakistan, then that would have an effect of it not travelling, extremism not travelling to Britain. Is it as simple as that?
Well, I don't think anything is ever as simple as that, to be
True.
honest, Kamal. I mean, the point is it's going to take quite a long time. And what's happened in Pakistan is because the government of Pakistan spent so little money on developing its own educational system and so much money on developing its military, which is it's larger than the United States in terms of manpower reservists, in order to fight a kind of inconsequential and suicidal war against India. It means that it spent nothing on educating its children. The children of poor Pakistanis ended up going to madrasas, and when they went to madrasas, they sort of did pick up the infection of militantism. And this is where the Taliban started out, was in the madrasas of Baluchistan, a northwest frontier province, which provided poor people with a diet of Islamism, but something to eat at the same time, so that their kids could be given some form of education. Their boy children, the girls didn't matter. So really what's happening if Prime Minister Brown throws in 180 million for education, it's not going to do very much, because the good education in Pakistan is privatized anyway, and it's for the middle classes, it's not for the poor. And the government of Pakistan still spends enormous amounts of money on hardware for fighting wars rather than creating peaces.
Ahmed Shah, just a final thought from you, briefly if you wouldn't mind, because we are running out of time. The only thing on, or not on that list of Gordon Brown's, is the idea of engagement. Do you think his government, do you think Western governments will ever entertain the idea of engaging with the so-called enemy?
You know, the problem is the European and Western countries are engaging for no reason in the fight in the name of Taliban, in the name of terror in Afghanistan. Our assessment is that and also I don't know what is the reason for the West that they are killing our people, and they are spending their own budgets, and they are going through economic crisis for their own people. There is no way. The best way is that they should come, they have power, they have enough influence to come with the peace negotiation. And peace negotiation is the only way. The ultimate goal of the Afghan and the international community should be to encourage people to come and to indulge the peace process. War, training police, training military, spending billions like they did it in the last 7 years, this will never help the European, the American, the Western countries at all.
Final thought there from Ahmed Shah. Thank you for that, and also to Imtiaz Gul in Islamabad and Michael Griffin in London. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen, and thank you, our viewers, as always, for joining us for Inside Story. You can send comments on this show or a suggestion for a future show to our email address. It is on screen, insidestory@aljazeera.net. From the whole team, it's goodbye for now.